5 minutes. That is all it took. 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, standing in the middle of a Lagos rainstorm, with no tools, no uniform, no shop, no name tag, nothing, a homeless man fixed an engine that had stopped completely. An engine that every mechanic she knew would have said needed a full inspection. An engine that any roadside technician would have charged her thousands for and kept overnight. This man fixed it in 5 minutes. And she is a billionaire. The kind of woman who knows cars better than most men in her industry. The kind of woman who grew up around luxury vehicles from the day she was born. The kind of woman whose family built an empire around engines and spare parts and the specific beautiful machines that most people can only dream about. She knows cars. And she watched this homeless man fix hers in 5 minutes, and she could not believe her eyes. But here is the part that will keep you watching. He did not just fix her car. He also refused her job offer. Right there in the rain, with nothing to his name and nowhere to sleep that night, he smiled at her and said no. And that no, that quiet, gentle, heartbreaking no from a man who was choosing homelessness over help, is where this story really begins. Because this man was not always homeless. This man was not always standing in the rain with torn clothes and no shoes and everything gone. Just a few years before that rainy afternoon, this man had the best car repair shop in the city. The best mechanics, the best clients, the best reputation. He had worked for every single naira of it. He had started from a small boy watching his father work under cars in a dusty workshop, and had built it all up with his own 2 hands and his own sharp mind. Until one day, one phone call, one terrible piece of news that broke him in a way that nothing else had ever broken him. And from that day forward, he was not the man he used to be. Until the rain came. Until the car stopped. Until he stood up. This story has everything. A boy who learned to love engines before he could read properly. A girl who grew up in a world of luxury cars and business and inherited ambition. A tragedy that destroyed one of them. A 5-minute miracle in the rain. A refusal that made her come back. A truth that changed both of their lives. And a love story that started between a homeless man and a billionaire on the side of a Lagos road and ended on the other side of the world. Stay here. Every second of this story is worth it. I promise you, you will not want to leave. But before we start, if this is your first time watching Tribal Tales Hub, welcome to the family. We tell African stories that stay with you long after you finish watching. Stories about real people, real pain, real hustle, real love, real miracles. Please do 3 things right now. Hit that like button. It takes 1 second and it helps more people find this story. Subscribe to Tribal Tales Hub and hit the notification bell. We drop new stories every week. You do not want to miss them. Drop a comment below. Tell us where you are watching from. And tell us this, have you ever helped someone who did not ask for help? We read every single comment. Everyone. Now, let us go back to the beginning. To a small workshop in Ennui, Anambra State. To a boy watching his father's hands. His name was Chukwuemeka Obara. Everyone called him Emeka. He was born in 1993 in a small rented house in Ennui, a town in Anambra State that most people in Nigeria know for one thing above all others: spare parts. Ennui is the spare parts capital of West Africa. It is a city built on engines, on the movement of mechanical things, on the knowledge of how machines work and how to fix them when they stop working. From the main market to the side streets to the back compounds where whole families have been in the trade for 3 or 4 generations, Ennui breathes cars. It lives cars. It thinks in parts and systems and the specific beautiful logic of how a machine turns fuel into forward motion. Emeka grew up in this world. His father, Mr. Obiageli Obara, had a small workshop on the edge of the Ennui market area. Not a big workshop, a real workshop, a concrete floor, a corrugated iron roof, 4 raised platforms for working under vehicles, a wall of metal shelving holding organized rows of spare parts, and a single large red toolbox that had belonged to his own father before him, and that he polished every Friday evening with the same care a musician gives their instrument. His father was not a rich man, but he was a known man. In the world of Ennui mechanics, Obiageli Obira had a reputation. He was the man you brought your car to when everyone else had given up. When other mechanics told you the engine was finished and you should buy a new one, Obiageli would look at it quietly, listen to it the way a doctor listens to a chest, and more often than not he would say calmly, "I can fix this." And then he would. His mother, Mrs. Adjora Obira, was a housewife and a trader on the side. She kept a small table near the market entrance where she sold provisions, cooking seasoning, soap, matches, the small things people needed every day. She was a warm and practical woman whose warmth was not loud, but was the kind that you felt when you were around her, the kind that made people trust her without being able to explain why. They had 3 children. Emeka was the second, and the only boy, caught between 2 older and younger sisters who were both convinced that he received more attention than he deserved, which was probably true. He started going to his father's workshop when he was 5 years old. Not every day. His mother did not allow every day. But Saturdays, when school was not in session and his father was working, Emeka was allowed to come to the workshop and sit on a small wooden stool near the wall and watch. He watched everything. The way his father's hands moved under a car, confident, exact, never rushing. The way he identified problems before opening anything up, just by listening, just by placing one hand on the engine cover and feeling. The way he explained what he was doing to his apprentices, 2 young men named Jude and Kenichukwu, in the specific language of mechanics, not technical in the way of textbooks, but technical in the way of people who have learned with their hands. "Hear that sound?" his father said one afternoon to Jude, his hand gesturing vaguely toward the engine of a Toyota Corolla they were working on. "That is the valve tapping. It is not serious yet, but if you ignore it another 2 weeks it becomes expensive." Jude nodded. "And this," his father said, touching a different part, "is wet, you see. Oil where there should not be oil, that tells you something. What does it tell you?" "The gasket," Jude said. "Which one?" Jude thought. "The head gasket," he said. "Look again," his father said. He pointed to a specific spot, lower between the sump and the block. Emeka, watching from his stool, said quietly, "The sump gasket." Both men turned and looked at him. He was 7 years old. His father looked at him for a moment. Then he said, "Come here." Emeka climbed off the stool and went to where his father was crouching beside the car. His father showed him the specific spot. Emeka looked at it carefully. "You were right," his father said. "How did you know?" "The oil is not high up," Emeka said. "If it was the head gasket, the oil would be higher. This oil is coming from below." His father was quiet for a moment. Then he said to Jude, "He watches better than you." Jude was not offended. He had seen the boy watching. He had seen the quality of the watching, the focused, absorbing attention that was not passive but active, cataloging and connecting everything it observed. From that day, Emeka's place in the workshop changed. He was no longer just on the stool. His father began talking to him directly during the work, explaining things specifically to him as well as to the apprentices. And Emeka absorbed all of it with the same quality of attention that he had been bringing since he was 5. He learned to identify problems by sound before anyone touched a tool. He learned what oil looked like when it was old, when it was contaminated, when it was leaking from different parts. He learned the difference between a fault that was urgent and one that could wait, and why that difference mattered for the customer's budget as much as for the car. He learned at 8 years old how to change a tire properly. At 9, how to do a brake pad replacement. At 10, how to diagnose an electrical fault. By the time he was 11, the apprentices would sometimes ask him questions when his father was busy, and he would answer correctly. His father watched all of this with the quiet, specific pride of a man who understands that his child has inherited not just his trade but his gift, not just the knowledge, the instinct, the specific, rare ability to feel a machine the way musicians feel music. He called Emeka inside one evening, at the end of a Saturday in the workshop. They sat in the small back room where his father kept his accounts, a wooden table, 2 chairs, a shelf of ledgers. "You are good at this," his father said. Emeka said nothing. He knew it was true, but he was 11, and he had not yet learned how to receive this kind of acknowledgement from his father. "The work," his father continued. "You understand it, you feel it. That is not something I can teach anybody. Some people come to this work for 20 years and they never feel it. You feel it at 11. "I love it," Emeka said simply. His father nodded. "I know," he said, "but loving it is not enough." He leaned forward. "You must be educated about it. Not just this." He held up his hands, the hands that knew engines, but here. He touched his temple. "The business side, the management, the understanding of money and how to make the work grow." "I will study," Emeka said. "Yes, you will," his father said. "And your school fees will come from this workshop, every single naira." This was not said to create pressure. It was said as a statement of dignity, as a man saying, "My work is what pays for your future, and I want you to know that, and I want you to know what that means." Emeka understood. He started school the following year at one of the better secondary schools in Ennui, a private school with proper facilities that his father's workshop income could just barely cover. The fees were a stretch every term. There were months when his father had to work extra shifts and take extra jobs, and his mother sold more provisions, and there were quiet conversations in the house that Emeka was not supposed to hear but heard anyway. He heard and he studied. He was not the kind of student who found everything easy. He worked for every grade. He read twice as much as his classmates. He spent evenings at the table with his textbooks and his notebooks while his sisters watched television and his parents worked. But in any subject that connected to the physical world, physics, technical drawing, basic engineering principles, he was exceptional. Not because the school taught these things well, but because he had a foundation that no classroom could have built. He had years of a red toolbox and a concrete floor and his father's patient, precise explanations. At 15, he entered a state-level technical skills competition for secondary school students. The challenge was to diagnose and repair a deliberately faulted engine, a vehicle that had been set up with multiple problems that competitors had to identify and fix within a time limit. Emeka finished in 40% of the allowed time. The second-place competitor finished in 90%. He won by a margin that made the judges do a double take. He came home with the trophy and put it on the shelf where his father kept his accounts. His father looked at the trophy for a long time. Then he said, "Next year, win it again." He won it 3 years in a row. By the time secondary school ended and university applications were being submitted, Emeka Obira had a reputation that extended beyond Ennui. He had been written about in a state newspaper after the third competition win. His father's workshop had benefited from the attention. People came from other towns, specifically because they had heard about the mechanic's son who could diagnose any engine problem in minutes. He applied to Nnamdi Azikiwe University in Awka for mechanical engineering. He was accepted. He also applied for a skills-based scholarship offered by a Nigerian automotive parts company. He received it. His mother cried when the letter came. His father, as usual, said the right thing in very few words. "Good," he said. "Now go and learn what I could not teach you." University was where things accelerated. Nnamdi Azikiwe University had a mechanical engineering program that was, for its resources, genuinely good. The faculty included 2 professors who had worked in industrial contexts abroad before returning to Nigeria to teach, and these men brought with them a level of technical sophistication that was different from what Emeka had learned in the workshop. Not better in practical terms, but deeper in theoretical foundation. Emeka absorbed the theory the way he had absorbed the practice. He understood, for the first time formally, the principles behind everything he had been feeling intuitively since he was 5 years old. Thermodynamics, fluid mechanics, material science, the physics of combustion, the engineering principles of transmission and drive systems. Understanding the theory deepened the intuition. By his 2nd year, his professors were bringing him in on technical demonstrations, asking him to illustrate points to the rest of the class because his explanations were clearer and more grounded than the textbook examples. By his 3rd year, he was part of a small team that entered a national engineering competition. Their project, a fuel efficiency optimization system for conventional petrol engines that could be retrofitted without major modification, won first place and was featured in an engineering journal. He graduated at 22 with a distinction in mechanical engineering. He called his father the day the results were released. His father listened to the result. "Good," his father said, and then, "Now come home and build your own workshop." Emeka laughed. "Not yet, Papa," he said. "One more year, there is something I want to learn first." He had accepted a position at an automotive engineering firm in Lagos for 1 year, a firm that worked with commercial vehicle fleets, and that would give him exposure to large-scale operations and business management that his father's workshop, as good as it was, could not provide. He went to Lagos. He stayed for 14 months. He learned everything: the business side, the client management, the staff coordination, the supply chain, the profit margins, the specific calculations of a workshop operation run at scale. When he came back to Nnui, he did not open his shop in his father's workshop. He opened it next to it. His father thought this was extremely funny and said so, which meant he said, in a specific tone that everyone who knew him understood to mean genuine amusement. The shop was called Obira Automotive Solutions. He had chosen the name carefully. His family name, his father's name, carrying the weight of what his father had built and what he intended to grow. Her name was Ifeoma Ademi. She was born in 1994, the only child of Chief Adwale Ademi and Dr. Funk Ademi, in a house in Ikoyi, Lagos that most people would describe as a mansion, and that Ifeoma, growing up in it, thought of simply as home. Her grandfather, Chief Oladipo Ademi the Elder, had been one of the first Nigerians to secure a dealership agreement with a European luxury car manufacturer in the early 1980s. He had understood something before most people did, that Nigeria's growing oil economy was creating a class of wealthy people who wanted to signal their status through the cars they drove, and that a well-run luxury car business positioned in the right city at the right time would not just profit from this, it would shape it. He was right. Ademi Motors began in 1982 with a small showroom in Victoria Island, Lagos. By 1990, they had 3 showrooms. By 2000, 8 showrooms in 4 cities. By 2010, when Ifeoma was 16, Ademi Motors was the premier luxury vehicle dealership group in West Africa, with 15 showrooms, a parts and accessories operation, a fleet services division, and a name that people in a certain Lagos world spoke the way they spoke about banks, as a thing that was simply there, established, permanent. Into this world, Ifeoma was born. She did not take the world for granted. This is important. There are children of wealthy families who absorb their circumstances as natural and permanent, and who therefore developed no real relationship with the work that created the circumstances. Ifoma was not one of these children. She was curious. From the time she was old enough to understand that her grandfather had built something, she wanted to understand how he had built it. From the time she was old enough to go to the showroom, which was from age 6, because her father believed she should see the business from as early as possible, she was not just looking at the cars. She was watching the business. She watched how the sales process worked, how a customer who came in wanting one thing was shown several things and often left with something different and more expensive. She watched how the floor was organized, which cars were placed where and why. She watched how the staff spoke to different kinds of customers differently, and what made some customers leave without buying and what made others sign. She asked her father questions that surprised him. At 8 years old, "Papa, why do you keep the most expensive cars nearest to the door?" He looked at her. "What do you think the reason is?" She thought about it. "Because people see them first," she said, "before they have decided what they want. So they think about the most expensive ones from the beginning, even if they end up buying a cheaper one." Her father looked at his 8-year-old daughter. "That is called anchoring," he said. "Where did you learn that word?" "I didn't know the word," she said. "I just noticed it." He put her in business classes the following year, private tutoring in addition to her regular school curriculum. A retired marketing executive who came twice a week and taught her the principles of retail psychology, brand management, customer value. At 12, she was sitting in on board meetings. Not to contribute, her father was clear that at 12 she was there to watch and learn, not to speak. But she was there. She saw how decisions were made. She saw how the senior executives argued about expansion versus consolidation, about new models versus older, reliable ones, about how much to spend on advertising versus how much to spend on after-sales service. She formed opinions. She wrote them in a notebook she kept. She did not share these opinions in the room. She shared them with her father afterward, at home, at the dinner table where they had the specific relationship of two people who are both business people and who use the family dinner as the safest boardroom. Her father listened to her opinions. Sometimes he said, "That is not wrong, but here is what you are missing." Sometimes he said, "That is correct, you should bring that up in the next meeting." The next meeting. He was telling his 13-year-old daughter to bring up a business point in the company's senior leadership meeting. She did. Her point was about the after-sales service division. She had identified, from the reports she had been reading, her father had given her access to company reports, that the after-sales revenue per customer was significantly below what comparable dealerships in South Africa and the UAE were generating. She proposed a specific program that would increase the frequency and value of customer returns. The executives in the room looked at her. Then they looked at her father. He said, "She is right. Let us discuss the implementation." She was educated at the International School Lagos, which was exactly what its name suggested, a school that prepared students for international universities, and that had a curriculum and a standard that was significantly above what most Lagos schools offered. She completed her A-levels with grades that earned her an offer from the University of Edinburgh to study business and economics. She went to Edinburgh. She spent 3 years in Scotland, studying and working and building her understanding of the world outside the specific bubble of Lagos' wealthy family life. She found Edinburgh cold in both temperature and culture, and she loved it. The coldness made her sharper, the distance from Lagos made her see it more clearly, and the education was genuinely rigorous in ways that challenged her even with her unusual preparation. She came back to Lagos at 22 with her degree, a British accent she never quite lost, and a plan. Not to join Adami Motors. To start something new. Her father was surprised by this, not displeased. He was not a man who required his daughter to do things his way, but surprised. "Why not come in and take over the group?" he said. "It is yours eventually." "I know," she said. "And when I do take it over, I want to have built something myself first. I want to know what it feels like to start from nothing." "Nothing," her father said. He looked around at the house they were sitting in. She smiled. "From less than what I grew up with," she corrected. She started Adami Prestige Automobiles. Not the family company, her own. A luxury pre-owned car dealership. This was a specific niche her research had identified. The luxury pre-owned market in Lagos was poorly served. People who wanted to drive an excellent car but could not afford the new price of a luxury vehicle had limited options for quality pre-owned buying. The existing options were unreliable, questionable history, questionable condition, questionable transaction. She would build a pre-owned luxury dealership with the standards of a new car showroom. Certified condition reports, comprehensive history documentation, transparent pricing, a guarantee program that no other pre-owned dealer in Lagos offered. She leased a space in Victoria Island. She hired 3 staff, a sales manager, a certification inspector, and an administrator. She sourced her first inventory, carefully selected vehicles with verifiable histories that she had inspected personally. She opened. The first month was quiet. The second month, 3 sales. The third month, 7. By the end of the first year, Adami Prestige Automobiles had sold 41 vehicles, had a waiting list for specific models, and had been written about in 2 Lagos business publications as one of the city's emerging businesses to watch. The second year, she expanded the floor space. The third year, she opened a second location in Abuja. By the time she was 27, her company's annual revenue was significant enough that her father had stopped asking when she was going to join the family business and started asking what he could learn from her operation. She was not yet a billionaire, but she was getting there, and she was getting there on terms she had built herself. It was in this period, when she was 26 and the business was performing at a level that demanded everything she had, that she drove her car out of her Victoria Island apartment one morning, heading for the Abuja branch for a quarterly review, and her car stopped. In the rain, on a Lagos road, right beside a man sitting against a compound wall, with nothing in his hands and nowhere to be. Let us go back to Emeka. Because to understand the man sitting against that compound wall, you need to understand what happened to him between opening his workshop and ending up on the street. Obira Automotive Solutions opened in 2018, the year Emeka was 25. He started with 3 mechanics he had recruited personally from workshops in Ennui and Lagos, men whose skills he had assessed carefully, whose reliability he had verified through careful reference checking and direct observation. He started with equipment that he had selected and purchased over 18 months of saving his salary from the Lagos firm. He started with a reputation inherited from his father and augmented by his own competitions and university achievements. From the first month, the business was busy. Word moved through Ennui in the particular way that word moves in a community where everybody knows everybody's business, and everybody's business is partly the same business, automotive. The Obira boy had opened his own shop. The Obira boy who had won 3 state competitions. The Obira boy who had that engineering degree and had worked in Lagos. People came to see. They stayed because the work was exceptional. Emeka brought to the workshop everything his father had given him and everything Lagos and university had added. He diagnosed faster than anyone else. He explained problems to customers in language they understood. He was honest about what was urgent and what could wait. He never recommended unnecessary work. He charged fairly. He stood behind his work. If something he repaired developed a related fault within 30 days, he fixed it for free. This last policy, some people told him, was business suicide. It was business strategy. Because when a customer experienced it, When they called him in a panic and he said, "Bring it back and there is no charge," the loyalty that produced was absolute. That customer told everyone, and word in Ennui was the most valuable marketing. By the end of his first year, he had a 6-week waiting list for appointments. He hired 2 more mechanics, then 3 more. He expanded the workshop floor. He added a customer waiting area, a clean, comfortable space with cold water and a television, something almost no other workshop in Ennui offered. It seemed like a small thing. Customers noticed it profoundly. His mechanics were the best in the town. He recruited only the best, and once he had them, he invested in them. He sent 2 of his senior mechanics to a manufacturer training program in Lagos. He bought them certification. He gave them good salaries and structured bonuses, and he treated them with the specific dignity of a man who understood, because he had grown up watching his father treat his apprentices well, that skill deserved respect. By year 2, Obira Automotive Solutions was the most celebrated workshop in Ennui. By year 3, clients were coming from Onitsha, from Awka, from Asaba, people who had heard about the workshop that diagnosed problems faster than any other, that fixed things right the first time, that treated you like your car and your time both mattered. He moved his parents out of the small rented house. He bought them a proper home, 3 bedrooms, a garden, a generator, a borehole, all the things the small rented house had never had. His mother cried. His father shook his hand and said, "Your grandfather would be proud." He bought himself a car, a clean, well-maintained Camry, nothing extravagant, a car that was practical and decent, and that he maintained himself every weekend because the maintenance of the car he drove was both a habit and a statement. He was 27 years old, and he was building something real. And then the phone rang. It was a Wednesday morning, a busy day in the workshop. The call was from a road traffic authority officer in Delta State. His parents had been on a road trip. They had wanted to see his mother's family in Asaba, a visit they had planned for 3 months. They had driven out on the Tuesday morning. Emeka had waved them off from the workshop entrance. The officer on the phone told him what had happened on the road between Ennui and Asaba. A lorry, a sharp bend, rain. His father was gone. His mother had held on for 4 hours in the hospital. Then she was gone too. Emeka was in his workshop when he received the second call. He was standing at the hood of a Land Cruiser that he had been diagnosing for a regular client. His lead mechanic, Abena, was beside him. He received the call. He put the phone in his pocket. He looked at the Land Cruiser for a moment. Then he said to Abena in a very quiet voice, "Please close up tonight." He got in his Camry and he drove home. What happened to Emeka in the months that followed is not simple to describe. Grief is not simple, and the specific grief of losing both parents simultaneously, not in stages, not with the small mercy of having one of them still present while you process the loss of the other, is a weight that most people cannot fully imagine unless they have carried it. He had been close to both of them in ways that were specific and irreplaceable. His father was his teacher, his standard, his proof that honest work built honest things. His mother was his warmth, the specific warmth that his father's quiet dignity did not provide, the voice that had always told him he was loved and capable and worth believing in. They were both gone. In the first 2 weeks, people came to the house. Family, neighbors, workshop regulars, community members. The kind of gathering that happens in Ennui when someone important dies, which his father was in the community important. People cooked, people sat, people prayed. Emeka sat through all of it. He was present physically. He received condolences. He responded when spoken to. He ate what was put in front of him. But he was not there. After the visitors stopped coming, the silence arrived. The house he had bought his parents, the house with the garden and the generator and the borehole, was very quiet. He went to the workshop once in the third week. Abena and the other mechanics were managing things. The clients were still coming. The appointments were still happening. Everything was running because Abena was capable and loyal and had understood from Emeka's manner that he needed time. Emeka stood in the workshop doorway for about 10 minutes. He looked at the bays, the cars, the tools, the wall of spare parts. He thought about his father standing in a workshop that looked like this one but smaller. He thought about sitting on the wooden stool at 5 years old. He thought about the red toolbox being polished on Friday evenings. He could not go in. He turned and went back to the house. He stopped going to the workshop. Days passed, then weeks. He knew the workshop was operating. He knew the accounts were being managed. He received daily messages from Abena and responded with single-word answers. The money was in the account. The business was functioning. He could not touch any of it. The depression arrived slowly and then completely, the way floods arrive, gradually building in corners you can barely see, and then one morning the whole floor is covered, and you cannot remember when it became this total. He stopped eating properly. Not dramatically, he did not stop eating. He ate enough to continue existing, but mealtimes lost their meaning. Food became fuel administered minimally. He stopped sleeping properly. Long hours in the house but not sleeping, lying in the dark with everything playing back. The phone call, the lorry, the bend in the road. The thing he kept returning to, which was the fact that his father was a mechanic, that his father understood cars and their maintenance, that whatever happened on that road was not because the car was poorly maintained. But Emeka's mind, in the darkness, in the grief, kept asking questions it could not answer. What if there had been something wrong with the car that he had not noticed? What if he should have checked it himself before they left? He was the expert. He was the man who could find engine problems by ear. What had he missed? The questions were not rational. He was not rational. He was grieving, and he was guilty, and he was broken in a way that the word broken does not adequately capture. He sold the house. His sisters were alarmed. They came from their respective cities. They sat with him. They talked to him about selling being a mistake. He was not moved. The house was the house of his guilt, and he needed to not be in it. He sold the workshop. This alarmed everyone more. Abena called him 3 times in one day. His sisters called. An uncle called. He had been building this for years. He had been building it with everything he had. How could he sell it? He could not explain. He could not say, "The workshop is where my father is, and being where my father is without my father is the worst thing in the world, and I cannot exist in this while this is what it is." He sold it. He took the money from the house and the workshop. He had more money than he could use in years. It was real money, the sale of a well-performing business in a respected community and a property in a good area. And then he did something that no one around him could understand or explain. He put all of it into stocks. Not strategically, not with research or advice or the business intelligence that had driven every decision he had ever made. He was not in a condition for strategy. He opened a trading account on his phone at midnight in a studio room he had rented in Lagos because he had sold the Ennui house and could not go back to Ennui. He randomly selected stocks. He distributed the money across them without reading the companies, without understanding the valuations, without doing the calculation that his engineering brain was capable of doing with absolute precision when it was functioning normally. He clicked purchase. He closed the app. He stopped caring about the result. He stopped paying the studio rent. He moved out before they could ask him to leave, because moving out was something he could choose to do before it was chosen for him, and the small control of that was the only control he wanted. He took his phone and his small bag, and he walked out. He was 28 years old. He had once been the best mechanic in his town. Now he was sleeping under the overhang of a shop front in Lagos with a cracked phone, no charger, and the specific emptiness of a man who has decided that existing is all he is going to do, and existing only barely. That was how he ended up on the street. That was how he ended up sitting against a compound wall in the rain when Ifeoma Ademi's car stopped. The morning it happened was a Thursday. Emeka was awake before the rain started. He had been awake most of the night, sitting against the compound wall of a residential building on a side street in Victoria Island, not begging, not actively surviving in the way that required engagement with the world, just present on the street, the way furniture is present in a room that nobody uses anymore. He was in a state of specific suspension, not unconscious of his situation but not invested in it. He existed. The day had started. Both of these things were true and neither required anything from him. The rain started at 8:15. It started the way Lagos rain starts, fast and complete, a decision rather than a process. He had heard it coming, the particular quality of the air before a Lagos rainstorm, the way the sounds of the street changed slightly, the distant first percussion of drops on metal roofs. He had heard it and had not moved, because moving required a reason and he had none. He was wet within 2 minutes. He did not notice significantly. And then he heard the car. He heard it before it stopped, heard the specific complaint in the engine that told him what was happening before the car had made its final halt. The kind of sound that, in his other life, would have sent him out to investigate without a second thought. The sound of a vehicle that had developed a fault in the fuel delivery system, probably a combination of a failing fuel pump and a blocked filter. The kind of fault that announced itself with a precise set of symptoms that he could read the way other people read faces. The car rolled to a stop about 15 meters from where he was sitting. It was a Mercedes GLE, a current model, well-maintained, clearly the vehicle of someone with money and the sense to care for their things. It stopped in front of a compound gate, just far enough from the gate that the driver could not push it inside. The driver door opened. A black African woman stepped out. She was in her mid-20s, professional clothes, blazer and trousers, clearly heading somewhere important. Her expression was the expression of someone who is late and has just had a problem land on top of the lateness that makes both worse. She looked at the car. She looked at the road. She took out her phone. She called someone. Emeka could hear her across the 15 meters, half her voice audible through the rain. "The car has stopped," she said. "I don't know the engine. Yes, how long? I have a meeting in 45 minutes. A pause. That long? I cannot wait that long." She ended the call. She looked at the car again. Then she looked at the road, the kind of look that says I am searching for options I have not thought of yet. Her eyes moved along the street and landed, briefly, on Emeka. He was sitting against the wall. She looked at him for a moment the way you look at a part of the landscape, present but not in focus. Then she looked away and made another call. Emeka sat in the rain. And something happened to him that had not happened in months. Something woke up. Not a dramatic waking, not a sudden burst of the man he used to be filling the empty space inside him, but something, a small, specific thing. He thought about his parents on the road between Ennui and Asaba. He thought about the lorry and the bend. He thought about the rain that had been falling that day too. He thought, what if someone had stopped? What if someone on that road had seen something wrong before the lorry reached the bend? What if someone had been there, had looked at the road, had noticed the problem before it became irreversible? He looked at the woman. Her car had a fault he could identify precisely. He knew the fault. He knew how to fix it. He had fixed this exact problem 30 times in his workshop. He had the knowledge in his hands, in his blood, in the specific cellular memory of 10,000 hours of mechanical work. And she was standing in the rain with 45 minutes to a meeting and a car, that was not going to start without the right intervention. He stood up. He did not think about it as a decision. It was not in the moment a decision. It was more like a reflex, the reflex of a man who was, underneath everything that had happened, still a mechanic, still someone who saw a problem and moved toward it. He walked to the car. She saw him coming. Her expression showed the complicated arithmetic that happens when a well-dressed professional woman in Lagos is approached by a homeless man. She stepped slightly back. Her phone was in her hand. He stopped a respectful distance from her. He did not look at her face. He looked at the car. "Fuel delivery system," he said. His voice was rough from disuse. He had not spoken much in weeks. "Probably the pump and the filter together. I can fix it." She stared at him. "You can fix it," she said. "Yes." "How long?" "5 minutes," he said. She looked at him, his torn clothes, his unshaved face, his general condition. She looked at her car. She looked at her phone. "If you damage anything," she started. "Pop the hood," he said. She looked at him for one more second. Then she got in the car and pulled the hood release. He went to the front of the car. He opened the hood. He began working. What he did in the next 5 minutes was not magic. It was not mysterious. If you understood what he understood about fuel systems, every step was logical, precise, and completely predictable in outcome. He located the fuel filter. It was in the accessible position this model placed it, which he knew without looking it up. He disconnected the fuel lines carefully, managing the residual pressure before the disconnection. He cleared the blockage in the filter manually. He had no tools, but tools were not required for this specific intervention if you knew exactly what you were touching. He reconnected the lines. He checked the fuel pump relay, which he accessed through the fuse box, also accessible without tools if you knew where to look. The relay had failed. He reset it using a technique that required the specific knowledge of this system's electrical architecture. He closed the hood. He stepped back from the car. "Try it now," he said. She started the car. It turned over immediately, smooth, running correctly. She sat in the driver's seat for a moment. Then she got out and walked to the front of the car where he was standing. She looked at him. She looked at the car. She looked at him again. "5 minutes," she said. He said nothing. "You fixed a fuel delivery system fault in 5 minutes," she said. She was not asking. She was processing. Her voice had changed from the stressed professional of earlier to something more alert and direct, the voice of a person whose attention has been completely captured. Without tools. "The blockage was manual access," he said, "and the relay just needed reset." "How did you know which relay?" "The GLE puts the fuel pump relay in the second row, fourth from the left," he said. "The fuse box placement in this model is different from the previous generation." She stared at him. "Who are you?" she said. He looked at the road. "Nobody important," he said. "Nobody important does not fix a GLE fuel system in 5 minutes," she said. "What is your name?" A pause. "Emeka," he said. She took a step toward him. She looked at him properly, not as the landscape, not as a figure to be cautious of. At him. "I want to offer you a job," she said. "Right now. My workshop manager position has been open for 3 months. I have been looking for the right person. I want to offer it to you. Today." He looked at her. A small, sad smile appeared on his face. "Thank you," he said, "but no." She blinked. "No," she said. "No," he said, "thank you for the offer." He stepped back from the car. She stood in the rain, watching him walk back toward the compound wall. He sat back down against the wall. She stood beside her car for a long time. Then she got in and drove away. She did not sleep that night. She told herself she did. She went home. She had her meeting in the afternoon. She made it barely. She worked through the evening, she had dinner, she went to bed. She did not sleep. She kept seeing his face. The moment he looked up at her, or rather, the moment he looked at her car instead of at her, the professional focus that bypassed social discomfort and went directly to the problem. The way his hands moved under the hood. The way he answered her questions, not performing expertise, simply having it. And the way he said no. She had offered a well-paying job to a man sitting against a wall in the rain. He had said no. Not because of pride, she had been watching his face. There was no pride in it. There was something sadder and more complicated than pride. He had said no because he did not care about the job. He did not care about the job because he did not care about much of anything. She understood this. She was 26 years old and she was perceptive, and she had seen enough of life to recognize the specific emptiness of someone who had stopped having reasons. She was thinking about this at 11:30 at night when she made the decision. She got in her car. She drove back to Victoria Island. She drove down the street where she had stopped that morning. He was there, against the same wall, in the dark, in the dry of the night, the rain long over, sitting with his back to the concrete and his knees pulled up and his eyes open, looking at nothing. She pulled the car over and got out. He saw her come toward him. He recognized her. His expression showed mild surprise and then the careful neutrality of someone who has learned not to feel things too strongly. She walked up and crouched down a few feet from him, at his level. "You said no this morning," she said. "Yes," he said. "I want to understand why," she said. He looked at her. "Why?" he said. "Because you are extraordinary at what you do," she said. "I know cars. I have known cars my whole life. What you did this morning I have not seen anyone do in those circumstances. And you are sitting here and I want to understand why." He was quiet. She sat down on the ground beside him. Not on a bench, not against the wall on the road surface, in her blazer and trousers, in the way of someone who has decided that physical discomfort is not a reason to not do something. He looked at her sitting on the ground. Something shifted in his expression. "I had a workshop," he said, "in Ennui, Obira Automotive Solutions." She recognized the name. She looked at him. "I have heard of that workshop," she said. "The Obira who won the state competitions." He nodded. "That is me," he said. She was silent. "My parents died," he said. It came out simply, without performance, the simple weight of a simple fact. "They were on a road trip. There was an accident. I was not okay after." She did not say sorry. She did not fill the space with the usual words. She just listened. He talked. He did not plan to tell her the whole story. He planned to say a few sentences and then fall silent. But she listened in the specific way of someone who is genuinely present and not performing presence, and the genuineness of her listening pulled more words out of him than he had said to anyone in months. He told her about the workshop, about what it had been, about Abena and the mechanics and the waiting list and the customer area with the cold water and the television, about building it from his father's example and his university training and his Lagos year. He told her about his parents and the road trip and the phone calls. He told her about selling the house and the workshop and the money going into stocks. "I put everything into stocks," he said, "randomly. I did not look at what I was buying. I did not care. I just wanted the money gone." She was quiet for a moment. "Do you know what you bought?" she asked. "I remember one name," he said. "From the screen, because it was the first one, I just pressed it without thinking." He paused. "Adami Prestige Automobiles." She went completely still. "What?" she said. He said the name again. She looked at him. She took out her phone. She opened the trading app he named. She knew it. It was a legitimate Nigerian investment platform. She said, "Log in, show me." He took the phone with slightly unsteady hands. He logged into his account. He had not looked at it since the night he funded it. He navigated to the portfolio. He showed her. She took the phone and looked at the screen. She looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at him. "Emeka," she said carefully, "when did you buy this?" He told her. She did a quick mental calculation. She knew exactly what her company's stock had done since that date. She knew because it was her company and she tracked it. The stock had gone up 1,200% in that period. She turned the phone so he could see the screen. She let him look at the current portfolio value. She watched his face while he looked. He looked at the number. He looked at it again. He could not speak for a moment. Is this real?" he said. "The number is real," she said. "You bought a Ademi Prestige automobile stock at its lowest point before the Abuja expansion. The expansion drove the value up significantly. And then two major industry reports last year about the growth of the luxury pre-owned market in West Africa drove it further. 1,200% is approximately what happened." He sat against the wall. The number on the screen was a number he had not imagined seeing. He was not poor. He had not been poor by any material standard since the night he randomly invested. He had just not looked. "Emeka," she said quietly, "you are not homeless. You have been making a choice." He looked at the screen. "I suppose I have," he said. "The choice made sense at the time," she said. "I am not judging it, but the situation has changed." She paused. "And I think you know the situation has changed. I think the reason you stood up this morning and fixed my car was the same reason." He looked at her. She looked back. "You are not finished," she said. "You came back to a problem because you could not help it. Because whoever you are, that thing, the mechanic, the man who hears engines, that thing is still working even when everything else is not." He was quiet for a long time. The Lagos night was around them. The occasional car passed. The compound light nearby made a pool of yellow that reached them both. "Your company," he said finally. "That is your company." "Yes," she said. "I accidentally invested in your company," he said. "Yes," she said. There was something almost amused in her expression, not dismissive of the seriousness of everything he had told her, but the specific recognition of the exact absurdity of the situation. "And now I have more money than I had when I sold the workshop," he said. "More than that," she said. He looked at the road. "I don't know what to do with that," he said. She was quiet for a moment. "I know something you can do with it," she said. He looked at her. "Open the workshop again," she said. "Not the same one, a new one, bigger, properly equipped, with everything you know now that you did not know when you started the first one." She paused. "You will have clients immediately. My fleet alone will keep 3 mechanics busy, and I know people who will use a workshop run by the man who fixed a GLE fuel delivery system in 5 minutes without tools." He looked at her for a long time. The sadness in his face did not disappear. Grief does not disappear when circumstances change. The money did not make his parents come back. The investment return did not make the phone calls unreceived. But something else was in his face alongside the sadness. The specific quality of a man who has decided to stand up again. "Tell me your name," he said. "Ifoma," she said. "Ifoma Ademi." He nodded slowly. "Ifoma," he said. "My mother's name was Ajora." She looked at him. "She would have been proud of this morning," she said, standing up. He did not say anything. But he stood up. He did not open the workshop immediately. He was honest with her and with himself about what he needed first. He needed to be in a condition to build something, not financially, which was now, absurdly, not the obstacle. Psychologically, he needed to process what had happened in a way that he had not yet been able to, with the specific support that processing required. Ifoma, who was a practical woman, took this information and did what practical people do with information. She acted on it. She called a psychiatrist she knew in Lagos, a Dr. Adeyinka Lowell, who had trained in the UK and had a practice in Lekki that served a significant proportion of Lagos's business community. She did not arrange the appointment for Emeka. That was not her place. She gave him the number and told him without pressure that this was a good person to speak to. He called the number. He made an appointment. He went. He kept going. For 3 months, he went every week. He talked in the specific way that therapy requires, which is not the way of ordinary conversation, which is the way of deliberately opening things that you have kept sealed and looking at them in the light. He talked about his father, about sitting on the stool at 5 years old, about the red toolbox, about the competition trophies on the shelf, about the way his father's hands knew things that no book had taught him. He talked about his mother, about her warmth that was not loud, about the way she looked at him, the specific look of a mother who saw her child clearly and was not afraid of what she saw. He talked about the guilt. Dr. Lowell helped him examine the guilt, the specific guilt of a mechanic who had lost his parents in a car accident and who could not stop asking whether there was something he had missed. Dr. Lowell helped him understand, not dismiss, understand why this question was not the same as responsibility, why the grief took the form it took, why the mind in loss looks for something to control, a reason, a fault, something that could have been done differently, because loss that has no preventable cause is the most complete and the most terrifying kind. He understood this intellectually. The understanding arrived in his head months before it arrived in his chest. When it arrived in his chest, he cried. In Dr. Lowell's office, on a Tuesday afternoon, the city sounds coming in through the window, he cried in the specific and particular way that people cry when they have been holding something for a very long time and have finally located the place to put it down. He cried for an hour. When it was over, something had shifted. Not gone, not finished. Grief does not finish. But shifted from a thing that was sitting on his chest to a thing that was somewhere else in him, still present, still real, but no longer occupying the place where breathing happened. He could breathe. He opened Obira Automotive Excellence in Lagos in April 2023. Not Ennui this time, Lagos. The decision to open in Lagos rather than returning to Ennui was significant, and it was considered. He had discussed it with Dr. Lowell. He had discussed it with his sisters, who were cautiously supportive of whatever helped him function. He had discussed it, increasingly, with Ifoma. The reason was practical and also personal. Practical, the Lagos market for premium automotive service was larger than Ennui. The client base that Ifoma's company and network could provide as a foundation was in Lagos. The infrastructure was in Lagos. Personal, going back to Ennui would mean going back to the community where his parents had lived and died, to the streets he would drive down and see them in, to the workshop beside his father's workshop that he had built because he was not ready to fully leave his father behind. He was not ready for that yet. He might be, eventually. He was not yet. Lagos was a city where you could start without being recognized, where you could be new without it being a statement. He found a space in the Surulere area, large enough for 10 bays, with a decent office, a proper customer area, good storage. He equipped it with the specificity of someone who had spent years knowing exactly what equipment made a workshop function at the highest level. He did not cut corners. He bought the right diagnostic equipment, not the cheapest that would do the job, but the specific tools that would allow him to do the job at the level he intended to do it. He called Abena. "Come to Lagos," he said. Abena's response was characteristically direct. "I have been waiting for this call for a year." He brought Abena and one other mechanic from the old workshop, men who knew his standards and whom he trusted. He hired 2 Lagos mechanics whom he assessed with the rigorous process he had developed, a practical test, an interview about their diagnostic approach, a reference check. He had 5 mechanics. He had a workshop. He had a business account that was funded by his investment returns, which were, in the language of his situation, extraordinary. He opened on a Monday morning. On Monday afternoon, IFOMA's fleet manager called to schedule the first fleet service visit. On Tuesday, 2 of IFOMA's personal contacts called for individual vehicle appointments. On Wednesday, someone who had heard about the opening from IFOMA's network walked in off the street. By the end of the first month, the appointment book was half full. By the end of the second month, it was full. By the third month, there was a waiting list. Lagos noticed what Ennui had noticed before it. This mechanic was different. The quality of the diagnosis, the speed of the work, the honesty of the pricing. The customer area, upgraded this time, proper comfortable seating, coffee, a reliable Wi-Fi network for people who needed to work while they waited, the commitment to standing behind his work. The word spread the way it had spread in Ennui, organically, through the specific trust of people who had experienced something that was better than what they expected, and who felt the need to tell others about it. He and IFOMA did not become a couple immediately. He was not in a condition to become anything quickly, and she was not a woman who moved without thinking. She had planned her business from 17, and she brought the same care to her personal life. They became something slower and more durable than quick. They became friends first. The kind of friendship that forms between 2 people who have seen something real in each other, not the performed versions, the real ones. He had seen her get out of her car and sit on the Lagos road surface in her blazer. She had seen him stand up from the compound wall and walk toward a problem he had no obligation to address. Both of them understood what they had seen. They talked, a lot. In the early months, often late in the evening, she would stop by the workshop after her showroom closed. When he was doing the day's accounting or reviewing the next day's schedule, and they would talk about the business, and then about other things, and then the evening would be much later than either of them intended. She asked him about his father. He asked her about her grandfather. She told him about Edinburgh, the cold, the clarity, the specific quality of building your thinking somewhere far from everything familiar. He told her about the national engineering competition and what it had felt like to have the panel of judges look at his group's project with genuine recognition. She told him about the fear she had carried starting the Prestige Automobiles business, not the performance of confidence, the actual fear. The nights of calculation and recalculation, the specific terror of having put her family's reputation behind something she had not yet proven she could do. He told her about the first time a client had brought in a car that every other mechanic had called finished, and how he had spent 4 hours diagnosing it and found the fault and fixed it, and how the client had stood in the workshop with tears in his eyes because the car had belonged to his father, and he had been desperate not to lose it. "That is why you stood up," she said. He knew what she meant the morning in the rain. "I think so," he said. "The car stopped. The rain was coming, and I thought about my parents on the road, about the rain that day." He paused. "And I thought, what if there had been someone who could have helped? Would they have walked past?" She looked at him. "You couldn't walk past," she said. "No," he said, "I couldn't." There was a long pause. "I am glad," she said simply. He looked at her. She looked at him. The evening was late. The workshop was quiet. The Lagos street outside was doing what Lagos streets do at late evening, never quite stopping, just changing the quality of its noise. He reached across the desk between them and took her hand. She let him take it. Neither of them said anything for a while. He did not need to say anything. Neither did she. Some things are better confirmed in silence. The business grew through the second and third years in ways that Emeka had planned for, but that still exceeded his projections. By year 2, he had added 3 mechanics and opened a second bay. He had secured a corporate contract with a Lagos hotel group, whose fleet of vehicles needed regular servicing. He had secured a contract with a private security company that ran a large fleet of SUVs. He had secured a contract with a financial institution's executive vehicle program. These were not small contracts. By the time the second year's accounts were finished, Obira Automotive Excellence had revenue that placed it firmly among the significant small businesses in Lagos. Not a corporation, not a household name in the citywide sense, but a genuinely successful operation with real money and a reputation that was growing. In year 3, he opened the second location. He chose a space in Victoria Island, near IFOMA's showroom, which was partly convenience and partly a statement about what was being built and who was building it. By year 3, they were building things together. Not formally, not yet, but the line between her business network and his had become permeable. Her clients who had automotive needs came to him. His clients who wanted premium vehicles went to her. They referred without being asked. They advised each other without being paid for the advice. They showed up for each other's openings and meetings and the small daily emergencies that business produces. And in the evenings and on Sunday mornings, and in the particular way of 2 people who have decided that they are a we without yet making a formal announcement of it, they were together. He proposed to her on a Sunday morning in the workshop. Not by plan, or rather, not by the kind of plan that involves booking a restaurant and arranging flowers and orchestrating a moment. He had the ring. He had bought it 3 weeks earlier, with the specific care he brought to every acquisition, having spent 2 weeks researching what she would actually like rather than what was conventionally impressive, having gone to 3 jewelers before he found the right one. He had the ring, and he had been waiting for the right moment. The right moment turned out to be Sunday morning in the workshop when she had come to help him review the quarterly accounts, and they were sitting at his desk with the ledgers open between them, and she was pointing at a number that she thought his supply chain cost could be reduced, and she was right, and he was listening to her be right, and he was thinking, as he often did in these moments, about the specific privilege of being loved by a person who was both warm and sharp, who brought the same quality of attention to a supply chain cost as to his grief, who had sat on the road surface in a blazer without making anything of it. He said, "I need to show you something." She looked up from the ledger. He opened the desk drawer. He put the ring on the ledger between them. She looked at it. She looked at him. "Ifoma Ademi," he said. "You sat on the road in the rain. You came back at 11 o'clock at night. You gave me a number and told me to call it. You kept coming back until I was ready to stand up." He paused. "I want to spend the rest of my life with the person who kept coming back." She looked at the ring. She looked at him. She picked up the ring. She put it on. "The accounts first," she said. "Then we celebrate." He laughed. She looked at him with the specific warmth of someone who is doing both things simultaneously, being completely practical and being completely in love. And for him, these 2 things coexisting in the same person was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. They finished the accounts. Then they celebrated. They were married 6 months later. Both families present, her father's side of the Lagos wealthy world, and his sisters from Ennui and his old clients, who had become friends over the years of the workshop. Abena gave the best man speech. It was the funniest and most heartfelt thing anyone at the wedding had heard. He spoke about the day he had received the message to close up the workshop, and how he had known from the quality of Emeka's voice that the world had changed. He spoke about the phone calls over the months that followed. He spoke about the call that said, "Come to Lagos." "I knew," Abena said, looking at Emeka, "from the first week that you were going to be all right, because you were still diagnosing, even from the compound wall." He paused. "I did not know it was going to take this form." He looked at Ifoma. "But I am not surprised." The room laughed and then was still. Ifoma's father, Chief Edwale Ademi, gave a toast. He said, "My daughter started a business at 22. I thought I understood what she was building. I was wrong. She was building a life. The business was the vehicle." He raised his glass. "To the mechanic who fixed a GLE in 5 minutes without tools, you have my full confidence." 2 years after the wedding, they took the trip they had promised each other. Not a honeymoon, they had had a honeymoon, a week in Cape Verde that was quiet and warm and entirely theirs. This was different. This was the world. They went to London first. She showed him Edinburgh, where she had built her thinking in the cold. He understood the cold immediately, the specific quality of a place that makes you sharper. They went to Germany, to Stuttgart, where a museum held the original patents and prototypes of the automobile. He stood in front of the first internal combustion engine ever built and was completely still for 10 minutes. She watched him stand there. She understood this was the pilgrimage. They went to Japan, to Nagoya, where the largest automotive manufacturer in the world had its origins. He walked through the museum there with the specific reverence of a person, in the presence of something that shaped everything they love. They went to Morocco, to Senegal, to Ghana, to Rwanda. They came home. To Lagos, to the workshop in Victoria Island and the showroom in Victoria Island, and the apartment in Ikoyi that they had shared since the wedding. To Sunday morning accounts at the workshop desk. To the city that had held all of it, the compound wall, the rain, the 5 minutes, the return at 11 o'clock, the ring on the ledger, the life that had come after. On the evening they came home from the last trip, he stood in the workshop after she had gone home. The workshop was empty. It was late. The mechanics had long since left. The day's jobs were done. He stood in the center of the floor. He thought about his father, about the small workshop in Ennui, the 4 raised platforms, the wall of organized spare parts, the red toolbox polished every Friday. He thought about the stool at 5 years old. He thought about everything that had grown from that stool, the competitions, the university, the Lagos firm, the first workshop, the fall, the compound wall, the rain, the car, the 5 minutes. He thought about Ifoma. He thought about what she had said that night on the road. "You are not finished." He had not been finished. He was, if anything, just beginning. He turned off the workshop lights. He walked home. The Lagos night was around him, loud and alive, and full of everything that cities are full of people building things, full of people who had fallen and gotten up, full of problems being diagnosed and fixed by people who had the hands and the heart for it. He walked home to the woman who had come back at 11 o'clock. And the story that had started on a compound wall in the rain was, from this evening, not a story about falling. It was a story about standing up. And that, my wonderful Tribal Tales Hub family, is where we leave Emeka and Ifoma. The boy from Ennui, who learned to hear engines before he could read properly. The girl who grew up understanding luxury cars as a business before she understood them as machines. The man who built the best workshop in his town and lost everything in one phone call. The woman who sat on the road surface in her blazer without making anything of it. The 5 minutes. The no. The return at 11 o'clock. The stock that had gone up 1,200%. The ring on the workshop ledger. The world trip. All of it. Let me ask you something. That morning, when Emeka stood up from the compound wall, when he walked toward a stranger's stopped car in the rain with nothing to his name, what was that? Was it an accident? Was it luck? Or was it something that had been inside him the whole time, through the grief, through the falling, through the months on the street, something that could not be destroyed because it was the truest thing about him. His father's hands, the red toolbox, the ability to hear what an engine was saying and to know with certainty what it needed. That did not leave him. You can lose a workshop. You can lose a house. You can lose the structure of your life and the reason to rebuild it and still have to force yourself to eat. But you cannot lose who you are. Who you are is in you at the compound wall the same as it was at the competition trophy. Who you are is in you in the rain the same as it was in the spotlit university lab. Who you are does not go away when the circumstances strip everything else away. It waits. And when the right thing happens, when a car stops at the right moment and a woman does not walk past, it stands up. You might be going through something right now. You might have lost something that felt like everything. You might be sitting against your own version of a compound wall, in your own version of rain, feeling like the person you used to be is too far away to reach. I want to say to you what Ifoma said to Emeka. You are not finished. What is true about you, the real thing, the talent, the gift, the quality that was always yours that does not go away. It is waiting for its moment. Be ready when the car stops. Stand up. My wonderful tribal Tailies Hub family, if this story moved something in you, if it made you think about someone you know, about yourself, about what it means to stand up again, hit that like button right now, 1 second. Share this story. Send it to someone who needs to hear it today. You know who that person is, the person who is sitting against their wall. Send it to them and say, watch this. This is for you. Subscribe to Tribal Tailies Hub and ring that notification bell. We drop new stories every single week, stories that earn your time. And drop a comment below. Tell us where you are watching from. Tell us what was your compound wall, what stood up in you when it was time. We read every comment, every single one. Because you are not viewers. You are the reason these stories exist. Until next time, my people, keep your hands ready. Keep your ears open. And when you hear the engine stop, stand up. God bless you. See you in the next story.